Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin. It's been weeks since this talent actually worked. So now we're gonna get to test its secret technique finally works and we get to see more of a finalized version of this ability. For Subtlety as a spec, a lot of people were trying to make hypotheses of, I wonder how the spec is gonna play, I wonder how it's gonna run. Not too crazy of changes happened to Subtlety overall, but that whole bottom row really is gonna help, I think, shape where the Subtlety spec is gonna be. So, secret technique, let's just slot it in. Oh, finally we can actually use it. This is going to be my first actual reaction of this ability and thought process of how I think it'll work. Let's take a look at the basics. 30 energy, so pretty cheap. 1 to 5 common points, so basically a finish. A 45-second cooldown, that's a little bit heavy. Finisher move that creates shadow clones of yourself. You and your shadow clones each perform a slicing attack. All enemies near your target, dealing physical damage to the primary target and reduce damage to other targets. So this is going to be an ability where you're hitting a bunch of one enemy for multiple areas and anybody offshoot for a fair amount. Comparing the tooltip to your Eviscerate can hit for 11k. This hits for Eviscerate plus extra. Cooldown is reduced by 1 second for every common point you spend. So this ability seems to actually do work. Now, one of the things I saw a lot of Assassination Rogues is move away from Dark Shadow into some more like Envelop and Shadow, so that might be alright for us. I think moving away into that might be okay. I think I'll stick with Night Stalker and Vigor for now, just to test this. Let's see what this ability even looks like first of all, man. Let's just test it on a single train dummy. Oh, it looks kind of cool. I did not expect it. I thought they would do like a whoosh, like a run through the enemy kind of deal. But it looks just like your artifact weapon. Like, those extra images that appear every time you Shadow Strike, that's basically what it looks like. One of the best parts about this ability, though, is the fact that its cooldown is reduced about 1 second for every common point spent into a finisher. Yeah, so you can actually get it back pretty quickly. And with the cooldowns I have for Night Stalker, Vigor, Soothing Darkness, I really I should be able to get this back pretty quickly. So I want to just build up a bunch of common points here. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll do this, then I guess we'll just build up a bunch of common points. Make sure it's all 5. Bam! Ooh, that's a pretty cool hit. That's a pretty cool hit. So on its own, it didn't do that much damage. Was there part of this? Oh, that's an Eviscerate, technically? Alrighty, so this ability itself is just secret technique on its own. There's no like some kind of Eviscerate combo with it together. Seems that Nightblade is honestly stealing a lot of my damage away right now. On its own, just Nightblade is just ticking like a monster. Secret technique did a little bit of damage, about 9.4k. I wonder if maybe I'm just running the wrong build here. Let me just go back to Dark Shadow real quick. And I guess I'll stick with Night Stalker for a bit, just to maximize the damage during my Shadow Dance. So, one of the things I want to do here, let's do this. Let's get a Nightblade on this guy, and let's get Dark Shadow back. I really want to compare the damage here. So, what I'm going to do is just take off Shuriken combo, get a big old Eviscerate in there, right? So 38k, so that's a crit. I won't have that Eviscerate back for a while, actually. So let me get that back. There we go. I'm just trying to test the damage. Maximum potential damage. I didn't have Symbols of Death with this one, though. So Eviscerate with Symbols of Death, about 38k, and was a crit. Shadow technique, secret technique. What is going on here? Damage-wise, is it low on damage? 3.9k when it's supposed to do about 13k total. Unless my numbers are just not counting here together. I'm not sure what's going on. Finish a move that creates shadow clones of yourself. You and your shadow clones each perform piercing attacks on all enemies near your target, dealing physical damage to the primary target and reduce damage to other targets. Unless for whatever reason this ability's tooltip is a little bit lower than what is, I guess, expected, I'm not sure what the hell is going on. So let me just first get some of these cooldowns back here. Like, for example, Shadow Dance. Alright, full 5 common point, everything ready, full burst ready, Shadow Technique. Alright, so the finisher move itself for Shadow Technique, I mean, this is the most damage that I can get to do in a single go, whether it crit, whether it didn't. And it got us about a 3.4k. That was very underwhelming. I'm not really sure what this ability is supposed to do. It looks like as a 5 common points worth of finisher, it should do a little bit more damage than Eviscerate. So I'm going to take a guess off the bat right now and say that this ability doesn't work properly, or doesn't scale, or there's a finisher effect to it that's supposed to do damage from you, and then your images effect, but you're doing the damage of your images as if you're hitting secondary targets for weaker. Or maybe it's supposed to be just a purely cleave ability worth of damage. Like, you're supposed to hit one target, and then you're supposed to cleave others, and then the main target will take more damage. I guess that's something we can also test here. Alrighty, let's go for big burst. Alright, you guys ready? Bam! Alright, now we see Secret Technique actually doing some solid damage right then and there. It looks like it is a purely cleave ability that doesn't have any form of single target advantage. Right now you can see Nightblade is kind of stealing the show away, and that's just one Nightblade on one target. So Nightblade doing a bunch of damage and feels like spreading it around, especially when you can get a Shadow Dance in there, as Symbols of Death maybe. Feels like that's doing a good chunk of damage. Secret Technique, as you can see, does a good chunk of damage, but only when there's multiple different enemies around. But let me just showcase you why it feels a little bit underwhelming. So I'm going to get common points in just about everybody. I'm going to have Secret Technique. I'm going to have my Nightblades available. So I've spent the time Nightblading, right? I'm going to spend the time into Secret Technique. And now we get to see the damage. So Secret Technique did its own thing, but look at that. Nightblade on every single target is stealing the show away. Shuriken Storm is being stolen away as well, and if I continue to Shuriken Storm, I feel like I'd be doing that better. Just me building up Shuriken Storms without any buffs did more damage than Secret Technique that was fully buffed. So I'm going to guess off the bat that this ability doesn't work as it properly should. So that's the only thing I can go with. Let me, now that I've taken a first look as a reaction to this ability, let me see if there's any explanation online, so maybe I can get you guys some of that explanation to you. Alright, I spent a little bit of time looking at this ability, looking up what other people are saying, and overall, it's one of those abilities that's now finally getting to the point of tuning and actualization. But with the game coming out so soon, it's almost like Blizzard is losing out on time. This ability needs to get tuned as soon as we can so we can see its potential. But overall, a lot of people have ideas of what this is supposed to look like. We don't have anything concrete, but let me give you my thought process here. So this is supposed to be either, one, give you extreme amounts of energy over 3 seconds whenever you activate Stealth or Shadow Dance. Use that energy for whatever form of damage. I guess you would use it for Shadow Strikes and Eviscerates. If you have some sort of a cleave, maybe some big bursty single target damage, Secret Technique is in some sense supposed to replace DFA. DFA being an honor talent now. With a 30-second cooldown, 15-yard range, 25 energy, only increasing Eviscerate and Venom and Dispatch, which is the new run-through for Outlaw by 50%. Secret Technique is supposed to be the stronger version of this, with some cleave / single target capability, with the whole aspect of, hey, the better you are at managing your common points, the faster you can reduce its cooldown. This ability being very versatile because in, let's say, an AoE situation, right? Let's say you just come in, use it, bam, you did some AoE damage in the opener, which this ability seems to do a decent chunk of. Let's say you need to get more damage out, you're just Nightblading all the enemies, or you're just eviscerating back to back, and as you're in AoE or single target, this ability is going to have its cooldown come back faster. So if you're looking for a purely, let's say, AoE situation, this ability can actually come in a little bit faster, so you can use it in order to keep the spread pressure going, keep the AoE cleave going. Overall, the ability right now, I feel like does very little damage, and I'm somebody who's for the most part has a fair amount of gear when it comes to my rogue. I just feel like the ability itself, in terms of the tooltip as well as the actual damage coming out, is not finely tuned. I mean, right now, if Nightblade is beating this ability out of the water just by putting Nightblade on every single enemy, compared to this ability is supposed to do a bunch of damage, it seems to kind of be short on single target damage. That's kind of where my concern on this ability originally lies in. The fact that this ability has cooldown reduction is awesome. That means it's going to be usable for more than one occasion, but the fact that it's going to have such a bad cooldown reduction aspect of it, or bad single target damage of it, look, like the single target damage of it is very, very minor. So overall right now, with the damage it is for the spec, for the ability, this seems like a pure AoE ability, where Shuriken Tornado basically takes that cake already. We already have a purely AoE ability. So having Secret Technique as like this cleave middle ground is actually kind of nice. I think it also sets it up for a lot of the rogue specs and kind of how they have the last whole row having to deal with AoE in a very similar fashion. Right now, Secret Technique doesn't do as much damage, and I'm hoping that a function for it will be kind of like another DFA with cleave-based capability. It'll be on the expensive side with a 45-second cooldown. You won't have this insane AoE, you won't have the energy regen on demand, but you'll have this ability that, when lined up right for Subtlety, will do a bunch of cleave damage whether you have 1 target, 2 target, or 3 target. One of the things I don't like about this, though, this setup, is how it feels purely AoE, have to take Shuriken Tornado. Cleave, have to take Secret Technique. Single target will basically almost have to take Master Shadows, at least I would guess. But for here, for example, Weapon Master Fine Rigged as a Gloomblade Doesn't matter what situation offers, this is single target versus single target, and I feel all three are in some sense viable. You know what I mean? Yes, one of them will be probably stronger for single target. That's the one that most people will end up running in terms of a build that they can come up with. But the fact that all three of these don't make you feel like, oh, you have to take one over the other, at least in majority of PvE situations, and feel like, okay, so with Gloomblade, I get that bypass and armor capability, 35 energy for it, so backstab is going to be a little more effective. Find weakness, of course, there's this burst aspect of it with shadow strikes. Weapon master is a little bit RNG, but can really save you on resources and get you a lot of burst if you're really just feeling like playing with a little bit of luck. 50% chance not being the worst percent chance possible out there. Overall, I kind of like that whole row setup. So the bottom row I'm not too happy with. I guess they understand the whole energy extra, would use it for what I want. Mass AoE, kind of like a 2-for-1 Walmart deal ability. And then this kind of all-in-one cleave capability, I guess, if that's how Blizzard wants to look at it. Overall, not a bad talent whatsoever. I really like the idea and potential behind it. I love the capability of it in terms of being able to cleave multiple targets. Also, I think the visual is awesome. To be able to bring something back from your artifact weapon like this makes it look really, really cool. It's not exactly what I imagined, because the idea of, let's say, you and your shadow clones perform a piercing attack, that's not exactly what I felt. I thought it would be more explosive, there'd be more animation to it, maybe a lot more of an effect, maybe some purple smoke or something. Because the whole, I guess, playstyle of Subtlety, in some sense, was sold by Blizzard. It's almost like this ninja-esque, with your shuriken throws and your shuriken storms and your shadow stabs. There's like a little bit of that mystical shadow thing for it, but also this ninja-esque thing going on for it. So overall, I guess I had certain ideas of what it would look like. Still looks pretty great. I like the homage to the artifact weapon. Overall, I like kind of where it sits. I'm not a huge fan of the whole row, but I like where it sits in terms of the competitor abilities. I think it has a lot of potential, especially if we could see some fine-tuned damage for it. And I like the aspect of cooldown reduction for this ability with a fairly steep cooldown for it to begin with. So any rogues that are really good at managing their common points, or maybe making more of a sustaining build where you can use this ability a lot more often, rather than, let's say, making a bursty build, I feel like it can give you a little bit more potential. And I think it's an awesome ability for AoE. I feel like it offers you more than one option for Shuriken Tornado being a mass long cooldown for AoE. This is something that can be reduced and something you can use a lot more often. And I feel like it kind of offers a lot more to the spec. I think it's very interesting to have some cleave capability for Subtlety. But I wonder how it'll work out with the spec overall. Overall, I'm happy with it. I like it. I would like to see some buff numbers. And I think I'll come back to this ability to take a look at it on the beta as soon as they fine-tune the numbers a little bit. Like if it looks like, yes, this ability is doing a decent chunk. But let's say we're somebody who decided, I mean, I guess, I don't know, I almost feel like this ability should work just fine on its own, but let's say we decided to go for some insane amounts of burst AoE damage, for example, right? Let's go for big AoE, then big one of these, then big AoE, and this. A couple of eviscerates in there, let's say, for example. Don't have our bypass armor capability. Let's see how well we do. So you can kind of see what this ability is stacking up at. Eviscerate ends up being super strong compared to the tooltip being, you know, only 11k. This being like 13k, so it should do that much more damage. Nightblade literally superseding it, and it just was put on one single target. Your melee abilities, your Shuriken Storms, like everything is just blowing this ability out of the water. So, of course, this is going to feel a little bit underwhelming for a good chunk of while. Of course, the game is coming out very, very soon. I hope that Blizzard gets this nailed ASAP. Or if they do end up replacing this ability for whatever reason, maybe they decide that, hey, this ability is just not something that we want to mess with right now. Maybe introduce it in patch 8.1 when they have the time to fine-tune it and find approach for it, unless they've been really shopping the idea about this ability. I honestly think the artifact weapon effect of generating 3 common points, 45-second cooldown, and a bunch of energy over like 6 seconds, maybe 30 energy over 6 seconds, would be a pretty good example of an ability that can go into the slot. It basically ends up being a whole row all about managing resources rather than, hey, extra energy to do damage, big AoE for big damage, or a cleave single target-ish AoE for damage if you're good at common point spending type of deal. I feel like it'll still work, but anyway, I like it overall. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. This is exciting to see this ability actually work in the game. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about this new talent, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.